Asia and Hispanic Gateway. This is part two. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Um, um, so yeah, so I want to go back to the inner world. Okay, as I talked about the inner world in the physical existence. Okay, in our flesh, our inner world will be our internal organs. What's going on within the inside of us, right? Things that are in the dark and the unseen in the spirit. Okay, so I say in the spirit because we can't see it, but we know it's there operating, right? Even though we can't see it, it's still doing its thing, whether we're paying attention to it or not. But there's many attentions going on within us. Like your organs are paying attention to what they need to do. So it's many forms of life. And then this happens on a lighter existence in the spirit, in the things that we can't see. Oh, the inner world also represents um, the spirit, because it'll be like more of the things happening internal that we can't see. And internal, external, they're all just directions. External is out, internal is in. Give is out, receive is in. Masculine is out, feminine is in. Yin, yang. Okay, this runs through everything, all life, on all existences and planes, all happening at the same time, calling it a present moment. So the spirit is not separate from the form, right? Because it's my spirit that's operating my form. It's spirit that's operating in general, everything around us energetically. It's just different words that we use to identify spirit, things happening in the unseen. Oh, inner world. Okay, that can also be a representation of the inner world, right? Because we can know that that's something that we have individually. We have our own inner worlds, right? We have our own things that are happening with us spiritually. We are having our own experience physically and spiritually. Duality, okay? Polarity, positive, negative, masculine, feminine. It runs through everything. Feminine is the spirit, can be looked at as a spirit, and the flesh can be the physical. If we want to break it down to the two, the deuce. You know what I mean? Inner world. This is the feminine, okay? There's a lack of knowledge on the feminine, and because there's a misrepresentation of what feminine is, because it's more associated with a female physical form. We're not looking at the lighter essence of feminine, as in natures, okay? Because characteristics are natures. Characteristics are in spirit. You can't see hold on to a characteristic physically. So that's in spirit, right? And I'm talking about as far as, how a person is, its being, it's the way it thinks, the way it sees things, its beliefs, its values, right? So this is the yin realm, the in realm, these type of things, okay? This is a way to identify them, identify the yin realm when you go within, because going within is self-consultation. When you're able to look at yourself and, how do I say, it's like it's the esoteric mirror. It's the mirror, the spiritual mirror, where you are at the seat of judgment. And a lot of people can't get past that seat. That judgment seat that's a real deep spiritual principle right there. Judgment, that goes deep because things happen deep in the spirit. Judgment affects people in many different ways, and that will let you know how well you deal with judgment. how knowledgeable you are about judgment, how much experience you have with judgment will determine your spiritual rank, strength, power. It's a source of power when you're able to deal with these principalities, but we're not being taught how to look at these things because there's no value. Or no value because we're valuing material things and we're not valuing building in the spirit. And we may see this as, some type of belief system when everything about life is learning lessons. So, and everything about life is power. But you have to be able to know how to identify power, because power is a spiritual principle. It's a spiritual essence, power. It's not just in physicality, in this physical existence. Power exists in the spirit. You can't do anything if you don't have energy, you don't have power. And that's physically and spiritually. A lot of people are spiritually suppressed, um, weakened, um, in many different ways. Let's go. Go world. Go world, J. Go. So that's because of the lack of knowledge of inner world and thinking that the inner world has to do with some type of belief system. What all it takes is some observation, some reflection. Um, a lot of people aren't able to get into this type of knowledge just because of the ego. The ego runs deep. There's many things that'll block off, because if we look at ego spiritually, we know it's the light, it's the sun. Okay, it's a representation of the light and the sun, the sight, being able to see, because we know light gives us the ability to see, so we're able to see in spirit. Okay, when we have the effective use of our light and have clarity, um, and light can also blind you. It can prevent you from seeing. It can blind you, put you in the dark about things. So it's a crossing. It's like Jesus died on the cross. It's a crossing. It's an access point in order to be able to have clarity and sight and wisdom to be able to know how to move forward in whatever type of situation or circumstance. So that's why, being humble, this has to do with the ego, is a more balanced, right? Because balance deals with clarity and it's still, because when something is still, you're able to see more of what's going on, right? So, but anyways, the inner world, okay? So the universe in its spiritual essence, in its spiritual workings and happenings, which there's many words and belief systems and stories and all kind of information we have to be able to describe these things. But what we all have to be able to do is still connect to the foundational principles. We can all be able to do that. And it'll help us be able to understand the workings that's going on around us spiritually, because we're not just in, existing in this world. It's like this is what I mean about suppressed, because we've been suppressed to only knowledge of what's going on of the world, and we're not looking at the knowledge of what's going on with the universe spiritually. Okay. That's a suppression. That's how we've been stagnated, very much because of the focus on history and religious systems, religious perspectives, corporate perspectives. Okay, there's been no reckoning, which is the balance, the restoration. So people are still caught in trauma because of there being a lack of reckoning. Okay, retribution for past trauma, karma. So karma is played out in all aspects of life. Once you can understand the principles of karma, karma is just a name for what is happening in the universe. What happens when you do shit? What happens when you cause shit? What happens when shit comes back to you? Um, because it's all our lives are based off of what we do, what we participate in, what we pay attention to. But the light has been manipulated, okay, into only seeing things of the light. And a whole bunch of spirits out here scared of the dark still, especially when it comes to the dark within themselves and not understanding, the times that we're in and how, I don't know, um, how you can necessarily believe in God and you don't even know the times that's going on right now, and your part that you play in it. And for people that don't even need to believe in God, to know that times are changing, things are definitely not the same, happening on many different levels. So, the inner world. So this is about the feminine, okay? Restoration of the feminine is not just the feminine in its physical essence, not just women, okay? And this is about going to the source, going to the spirit, because everything happens in the spirit before it happens in the flesh, okay? Because God sends spirit, right, to handle out its job before it happens here in the flesh. So just wherever your mind state is about that. It's just a figure. I'm just putting words in for as a figure of speech to just make an example. This is the inner world, okay? The more depth that you have in knowledge about the inner world, it goes deeper. This is just words like there. If I was to explain, have all the information on these areas of life, the words would be infinite. This is infinite. I only have, words and information that was readily accessible. But the depth of this is in the spirit. You're only seeing the physical image of it, but the depth of what the meaning, purpose, and reasoning in all this is in the spirit. But these are just words that we use to describe this type of world, okay? Because this is definitely a world. It's a church. This is a representation of the feminine church. It has to deal with the things of feminine within, okay? Yin, of spirit. If we breaking it down to the two, because that's not all that it is. I can't give you all of what feminine is. I can only give you ways to see it. So you have a church, a masculinized church will be the church you see on the street of society. But there is another church body that's in the spirit. And this is about how to build a spirit, not the church.